meant to do that before, but I always get too excited about diving into the content. Okay. Yeah, no, I think that that's great. Do you, Ron, since you were also brought up culturally aware and sensitive, do you have anything you want to add and contribute to that topic?
Well, I think that it was voiced very well. I was thinking about my own experience as I've been director of Hispanic and Migrant Ministry, been director of Migrant and Refugee Ministry, director of Multicultural Ministry, director of Hospital Ministry. And again, I always make the point that culture is really an octopus, and we're multicultural beings just by definition, but we move in and out of cultural identities all day long. So being culturally aware, I was also oversaw our ministry with Native Americans as well. But I had to learn these cultures, you know, and I had to know what I didn't know. And so to be culturally aware means that you know what your own cultural history is, and you may know your own multicultural history, but that doesn't mean you know someone else's unless you can find that common bond to share with them. If we were going to break this call down, for example, there are males on this call, there are females on this call. We have different lens. There are white people and non-white people on this call. We have different lens. So it's just being conscious of the fact that not everyone may be looking at something from your cultural perspective, but again, being transparent enough to say, you know, help me out with this, or when we're looking at organizations, again, I don't think the John Birch Society would be someone who might be applying, but I think it's important for us as board members to be culturally aware, as well as for the organizations who might come forth with proposals or RFPs to make sure that they're culturally aware as well.
I think that that's good. So does everybody feel okay with cultural awareness and sensitivity and making sure that we hold positive representation and inclusion as our values?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
No, I hate that. I hate that. No.
Who put active listening and open communication?
That was me. So what I mean by that is listening to learn and just like problem solve, kind of like active problem solving, instead of just listening to respond, and then being able to communicate that back in a space that is open and safe for people to disagree or ask questions.
I think that that's really, really important. And I know that when I get really excited about a topic, I have a tendency to take up like a lot of space and be really interested in engaging, especially if one person in a group is engaging with me and it leaves out everyone else. And so I like it when people remind me to listen sometimes. I have ADHD, which is not an excuse, but has been a problem for me. And it's something that I've been struggling actually with a lot more as I've become an adult, because now I'm faced with personal relationships that make me have more introspection. So definitely for active listening, I would love critical feedback for me personally. If you think that I didn't listen to you effectively in one of our meetings, I want you to feel comfortable enough to message me after a meeting and have a conversation about that so I can do better or become more aware of my mannerisms, because it's important to me that everyone feel really heard in this group. Does anybody else have anything else to add about active listening and open communication? I also want the people in our group who are Black to feel comfortable to talk about microaggressions and things like that in this group. We all hold racial biases, particularly white people, and it's integrated into our psyche. And obviously, I don't want to put any of that work on you guys because I don't think that should fall all to you. But I think it's important if we want to build like a good relationship as a team that you can feel comfortable to go up to any one of us as a white person and say, hey, you know, that didn't sit right with me. And feel comfortable to really have those conversations and make this space safe for you. And I know that Mara and Jeff feel the same way. And we're really here and open for you guys if you ever need to call us out.
Yeah, please, very much so seconded.
And I hope that will be the same for like kind of the men and women imbalances that sometimes can happen too. You know, because women are often told from a very young age that we shouldn't take up a lot of space and that we shouldn't be able to speak our minds. And sometimes men don't even realize it when they come through with microaggressions. And I want this to be a safe space that both men and women feel like they can talk about those things. So it's going to be like an ongoing process. I'm sure since we all are from the same background, it won't be as a problem, but we've all worked in other activist spaces too, and it still seems to be a problem for everyone all the time. So hopefully we can navigate those things as they arise. But I definitely believe that active listening and open communication is probably one of the most important values that we can put forth. I put down, I don't know, Regine. So reaching out to disenfranchised populations to create a more holistic and accurate narrative. Who wrote that one? It was
That's that pause. I did not.
Yes. So basically, it's the African proverb, to paraphrase, until the lion tells a story, the narrative will always benefit the hunter, something to that effect. So really just dismantling that and consistently and continually challenging ourselves to think about who's not at the table and how we ask members of the community and different people from different demographics to lead with us and to do work with us and to see how people are asking for help, not how we would like to give it to them. And same as them, as different groups getting involved with us, not telling them this is your slot, but to say, you know, how would you like to, how are you able to, is there something new that you would like to try that other spaces haven't given you the room to execute?
Yeah, I think that that's really important. Especially the part about thinking from the perspectives of the people who are not in the room with you. Because it's just super easy to forget about the people that aren't present when you're having an engaging conversation. So I think that that's important. Does everybody approve of that value?
Absolutely.
Great. I wrote a couple here, and I don't want to take up too much time with my own stuff, so I'll try to be succinct about these values and why I think they're important. So respect for local and indigenous knowledge. I have been working in participatory mapping, specifically looking about how local knowledge, whether it's indigenous or not, but just local knowledge in general, which is often not asked for by local governmental institutions when creating policies. And I think it's really important that we place value and respect of local knowledge first, instead of having outsiders come in and tell them kind of how things should be done. And in particularly a focus on indigenous knowledge when it is there and needed, as they have a very special way of contributing to decision-making processes and a way of looking at the world that we just simply don't have anymore. And I think it's just really important that we respect it and uphold it and keep it alive, and try to, you know, do the opposite of what colonialism has been doing for a long time for those communities. And we have here in Michigan, we have a lot of, we have a large Native American population. And I work with a lot of people up north in the overdose prevention programming, because they do have issues with drug addiction, because of them being marginalized historically. And so a lot of times people in these groups, they need extra support. And I want to be able to be considerate and provide them with that. How does that sound to everyone?
Sounds good.
What sounds good? To
Just that
piggyback.
that should be a value that we
Yeah.
have.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's kind of, and there are 2 points to what you said. One, that it's like going fishing and not asking the locals where the best fishing spots are.
Right.
And then number 2, I can't say enough about how important I think the work is that you do, because that's also the group that has the highest rate of alcoholism, and as well suffering from extensive depressive behaviors, as well as analysis. I mean, yeah, I just want to really emphasize, I think that that's an important point, to be conscious of the people for whom we're going to be serving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what pushes me back into the radical inclusivity, which is something that I put in, which is becoming a popular term. And that does mean, with respect, still valuing the lives of oppressors, because they're still human and they still have ample opportunity to learn and to change. And I think it's always important to at least hold space for those individuals, as long as they're not causing harm to others, to talk about those feelings and perceptions. And you know, knowing that they're not going to be attacked if they are talking about long held perceptions that were usually taught to them by their parents, and still creating space for that, still creating space for individuals who might not have the best mental health support, or are addicted to substances. I just want to make sure that we have respect for all people of all walks of life, up into the point that they're not harming, you know, anyone else, and providing that space. Obviously, truth telling can be very harmful to those who have been oppressed. And so when having conversations from the perspective of the oppressor, it can have a more traumatic effect. But I still think that it's important that we never dehumanize the people who have hurt us, because then we slowly become what we're trying to fight against.
I second that very strongly. And also allowing space for people to sort of speak without having to have the exact language that we're looking for, because then that defeats the purpose if we have to force people to use sort of like a social justice language when it's not sort of intrinsic to them, but what they're saying makes sense without the without the language, to allow that to happen as well.
I think that's good. Does everybody, are you all right in adding that to our values?
Yes.
Perfect. One other, well, I guess there's 2 other, sorry, I wrote a couple. There's 2 other ones. This next one is intersectional epistemologies. So I'm not sure if everyone in the group is familiar with intersectionality, but one of the kind of main tenets is that oppression and power is temporal. In one position at one time, one person can be oppressed and then turn around and oppress someone else. For example, for instance, in usual traditional senses, men have been told that they are oppressors of women historically. And there can be uneven power balances between men and women, but there are also power imbalances between men. And not all men fit the stereotype of what it is to be man and be masculine, and they're often oppressed in that one situation. Or perhaps, you know, the person who's, for instance, a lot of white Americans who are oppressive and racist oftentimes come from the poorest socially, economically marginalized communities. And so when we talk about those people who are harming other people, we should also have an understanding that that's not always the case in every situation. And we need to think a little bit more critically about these narratives, and not create our own stereotypes and inherent bias around what we believe the power structure and system always applies to people, because it doesn't, and it changes a lot. How do you guys feel about that kind of perspective?
I think that's good. I think that requires us to add sort of like an analysis of power. So like stepping away from like discrimination that has a face to an analysis of power and how it's implemented, because that seems to be the crux of most things. It's not about gender or race, but about how we utilize power in interpersonal dynamics. So I really think that's a very good point.
Great. And then the final one that I put was sustainable development. I always think back to Paul Farmer's like kind of writings about the work that they were doing in Africa for development organizations, and how they would show up, you know, ready, prepared to fight for against AIDS, and then the community that they showed up in like didn't have any AIDS. they had you know, malaria or something was their biggest health problem, but because the funders, you know, because it was such a big thing to fund AIDS research and do things to help prevent AIDS, they weren't providing any money for malaria. Or for instance, you go and you teach a community how to build a well, but you don't teach them how to maintain it. So after you built the well and they started using it, you left and they didn't maintain it and then got sick years later. I think that unsustainable development is a waste of money. I think it builds false relationships with communities who trust us to do good things. And then when it turns really bad and we're not there because we didn't create a sustainable plan for that project, it makes us look really bad, and it makes anyone else in the future who wants to help those groups look bad too, right? Because they just all become associated with the same crap that they've had to deal with for decades. So I just want to make sure in every step of this process that we're really thinking about the long-term sustainability of the projects that we seek to support, and are realistic. And obviously, like, it's so complex because we want people to choose and have autonomy and be empowered by their ability to help themselves and us to support what they need. But we also need to be realistic. And when we have a proposal that has nothing funded for monitoring and evaluation or post-analysis, I think that that's really important, that we say, well, you know, for this to be sustainable, you have to add this to your proposal. Like, we need to know what happens long term, especially in technology. Lots of people want to build platforms from scratch, and then they never get used, and then they just die over and over again, and it's a big waste of time and resources. And so I just think it's really important that we keep that in the back of our minds. Is everybody okay with these values that we talked about today?
Yeah.
Great.
I am.
Perfect. So I think we should talk about, we talked a little bit about it, so I don't want to spend too much time. Maybe just like, if you want to put something here, you can, like what your personal goal you want to achieve this year with the organization. So whether it's just, I want to feel good by contributing with a team of knowledgeable people to something good, all the way to, I want to learn a new skill. But I would like us just to take 1 second to do that, and we won't take any time to explain it, but it's on the board. So later in the year, when we're trying to go through and make sure that we hit all these goals, you remember your personal goals because they're important.
I'm going to switch to my laptop real quick. So if I disappear, that's why.
Okay.
I've been trying to switch to my laptop and I gave up. Um, Personally, I want to become better educated about the foundation.
Great. And so, and when we hit like the quarter mark, we'll come back and we'll talk about our personal goals and whether or not we feel like we're hitting those goals. Okay.
Okay.
I think it's good for us to move into needs and expectations. So in this section, I want to talk a little bit about what you individually would need to be successful, and what you need from a team to be successful in the things that you do. So for me personally, I really need people to let me know if they can't accomplish a task on time. I think a lot of times people, when they're working in teams, they're really excited about the topic. Sometimes they overcommit to something, or they something comes up in their personal life, which that's happened, that's life. But sometimes then people feel embarrassed to kind of tell the team and forewarn them, like, hey, I'm not gonna be able to get this done by the due date. And I want everybody to feel comfortable enough just to be honest and know that, you know, we're not judging each other, that we're all volunteers in this. And be kind of respectful and humble with people's time. You know, there will be times where I won't get something done that will need to be done, and I'm sure each of us will experience that at some point.
Awesome. So can I share what
Yeah.
I would like? So I would like, if something needs to be done, that it is clearly articulated and like is given a deadline, because without a deadline I will have no motivation to do anything. So I need like actually tangible deadlines, like by 7 p.m. on the 7th of August, so I know that I have a deadline, otherwise it won't happen. And that's what I need to be on track.
I'm the same way. I like to have deadlines or I'll just keep pushing it
Forever.
forever. Yeah. Would anybody else like to go with theirs? Talk about it a little bit. Or Ron, would you like me to create one for you?
Listening to me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, I would. Thank you. Uh, uh, Clear goals and objectives. I appreciate the comment too about the need for deadlines, because that goes for me hand in hand with the goals and objectives piece. Whether it's been as a grant writer or as just a writer with a deadline. Yeah, if I know I gotta have something done, I get it done. So I'm glad someone else's, or a few of us have that same sort of clarity of, yeah, give me a deadline and I can tell you if I can do it or if I can't.
That sounds good. I think we're all in agreement with the need for clear goals and objectives and solid. I like the solid deliverables for each meeting. I'm really big on having like next steps talked about before the end of a meeting. I really find, especially in activist spaces, sometimes we can get together and we can talk shop for hours, and then before we know it, the meeting's ended. And we never got to kind of actionable steps. My job as a facilitator, or anyone else, so like at any time somebody wants to facilitate a meeting, I'm totally cool with taking a back seat and people practicing. I think it's really important. But for me as a mediator and as the facilitator for some of these meetings, I think it's really important to make sure, if that's our rule, that we do make sure we bring it back towards the end for the last 10 minutes and let's talk about like solid deliverables for each meeting, and what those are, and creating to-do lists. Like I'm really big into creating to-do lists. Anybody else want to share any of theirs?
For me, so I put that I really need for people to be honest with me about feedback, but gentle. Long story short, I have received a lot of unwarranted negative criticism. So I just prefer that people are considerate when they express dissatisfaction or concern or even praise about something that I've done or something that I'm planning on doing. And even though I might not receive criticism well in the moment, like I might be tearful or just look really frustrated, that's just something I'm working through, like as a human being, to process things differently. So as long as it is visibly or audibly coming with heart and consideration behind it, I will probably receive it well, and I will continue to keep the lines of communication.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. And I'm happy you brought it up. I think that we should always try to assume that the person speaking to us has the best of intentions, but maybe just lacks the verbal insight to say it in a way that's sensitive and emotional. And so I think particularly when we're giving criticism, to think, is this a good time to give criticism in front of everyone? Or is this a time I should email the person separately and have this conversation, especially when it's a personal situation between you and another teammate? I think it's always a good idea to take that outside of the meeting and talk about it. Or if you feel uncomfortable doing that, coming to me or another team member to mediate, because I know sometimes it can instill a very physiological reaction in people when they get anxious about talking about something that's uncomfortable. And sometimes having the relief of having someone there just to make sure things don't go off the deep end. Uh, so we're always willing to do that, but I think, just trying to be conscious of, is this criticism going to embarrass this person in front of everybody else? Because that's when I have a tendency to get upset, is when I feel like I've been embarrassed or belittled by someone in front of other people. I take it much differently when it's like a one-on-one conversation. Like someone could be a kind of a jerk to me in a one-on-one conversation, and I take it way better than I did if they were a jerk to me in front of everybody else. Does anybody else have anything else to add? Or I think we can move on to some rules and action points.
Okay.
All right, so there's a lot of different rules that I usually like to talk about in groups. I have a pretty good list, but I will kind of let you guys take the front seat. I usually prefer, to see what other people gravitate towards as rules and action points, How do we want to make decisions? I left these things very vague because I wanted you guys to help and feel like you contributed to the actual foundation of the organization instead of you kind of just coming into something. So we can talk about that too. How do we want decisions to be made?
Well, I believe in the one person, one vote strategy, and if we, as we're doing here, each of us, we talked about accountability, so I don't see anything wrong with having a one-person vote system of accountability for decision making.
What does everybody else think about that?
I second that. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Do we want to do a consensus voting, or just majority vote?
I think it'd be helpful to know exactly what we were deciding and what before we. I mean, I don't disagree with the one person one vote. But depending on what we're deciding, if we go for a budget, if we're going for a larger decision, more sophisticated forms of voting.
Yeah, I mean, do you think we should have different kinds of voting across different spaces? So if it's the budget, it's a different set of rules versus what we're going to do with the grant program?
I mean, I think there's space, given that we'll be grading, if we're doing grant review, there will be some more sophisticated form of evaluation going on there, and there might be some room to creative about how the organizations are selected from there. But I think that's something we can discuss as we go on.
I love consensus in theory, but my experience working in consensus has been quite difficult, and I find that sometimes it leads to stagnation, and it really creates some ineffectual decision-making processes sometimes. But I also value it as a system that makes sure that everyone feels good about the situation and how it ends, usually. Not always, but usually. I know Mara has a lot of experience in coordinating as the chair of the DSA, voting procedures, and maybe she could provide a little bit feedback on what she her experience has been.
We haven't, as of yet, we haven't had too many contested votes, which has been nice. But it is just a big process is all. There's a lot to set in and to make sure that everyone is included, like thinking very much so like we're gonna have to talk about, I assume, how we vote online. Do we want to do different, what kind of time frame do we have for a vote? And then is for our organization, we have bylaws to follow, which do make it a little bit easier. There's already a set method and mode of how things are supposed to function. But I am not advocating for us to adopt Robert's rules as a way to function, not in the slightest. But it seems almost like a consensus building effort to get to a vote building effort.
It is, isn't it? Funny how that works, right?
Well, it really is, because you're going to have discussion, which is what consensus is formed around. And I think that actually having a consensus-based discussion model leading to a voice vote is also quite doable. In my time when I've served as president or chairman of a board or what have you, as you said, consensus always sounds good in theory, but at some point you actually have to give an up or down type of thing. And works for our legal system, so it should work for us.
Okay. So do you think like a consensus-based system would be good in both of those situations that Jeff discussed? So one in like actual like organizational structure questions versus like the grant process, because obviously like me and Jeff we know that we would like to have some sort of methodical criteria that we can follow and score projects that would help him be more fair. But maybe, as we said, if an individual on the board has a problem with that organization and feels like they're not being transparent, or perhaps maybe they're not being radically inclusive, or discriminating against some individuals in the community, that they should kind of have like the veto power. So kind of like the UN P5 situation.
Well, the thing is, in the model that you just framed, one vote could torpedo the entire process. So again, I think that as somebody mentioned earlier, we might in fact have different models of, let's say, approval relative to what the actual activity consists of that we're looking at or what we're doing. In my head, I keep thinking that, every organization I can think of that I've been involved with is, as I mentioned, we don't need to use Robert's Rules of Order, but respectful, professional, courtesy and decorum, and trying to build consensus. That does eventually lead you to a voice vote, because there's always discussion. And one of the problems with Robert's Rules of Order is, we got wait for motions from the floor, seconded, so approved, blah, 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 where, we can short circuit that if there's, appropriate, discussion and consensus that leads to a voice vote.
Mm-hmm. I personally feel that we should try to build consensus around major changes to the bylaws. I think that that's pretty important. for financial decisions, sometimes financial decisions have to be done fairly quickly. And we might not have the time to be able to meet and really hash it out in a consensus-based format. I think we would be better off for those decisions choosing a quorum of votes.
So 2 years ago and a year ago, when I helped a foundation decide how they're going to allocate their grant monies, they had like a voting system where you rate each organization from like 1 to 5, and then the 1 to 5s are tallied, and then the decision is made based on how much each organization receives a vote. That could be a way.
Yeah, choice ranked voting. I like that for like the awards.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really good way. What do you guys think? Are you guys familiar with that?
That's the name of it. Choice ranked. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically what I had in mind. I mean, there's a lot of sophisticated ways you can make that work.
Yeah.
We can wait until we have proposals to actually score, develop a system, and then figure that out from there. But I think I agree that the consensus base could be further how we operate, but then from for actually making financial decisions, yes, I think it should be more transparent.
For the financial decisions, do you guys agree that like quorum would be okay? And what would that be? Would it be a percentage, a number?
I think a percentage, because the board. Sorry. I think a percentage might be good because the number of people on the board may change.
But that also means that if you're not present at the meeting, you forfeit your right, unless we have like if we want to do it where we open it up not just to the meetings, but maybe you have like a week or 2 weeks to respond. Would that be okay?
I mean, you could have a pretty simple rule where if someone who's not at the meeting wants to table a particular proposal for a week. I don't know what our time frames are on these things are going to be, but or to table something for a meeting just to allow for more discussion, or to bring up a specific issue, then probably could do that.
Do you guys think it should be 1 week or 2 weeks?
That might depend on our timeline for making a decision. So
maybe we should set those like by circumstance.
Yeah.
Maybe if it's has to be made in 1 month or less, then we have a week. If extreme scenario, if something is due in a week, then we have a day. And then if it's greater than like just a tiered system, so maybe like you have 24 hours if it's due in a week, 1 week if it's due in a month, 2 weeks if it's between 1 month and 3 months, let's say, and then maybe 2 months if it's due in the next year. But I mean, that might be more of an ongoing conversation anyway.
Well, the methodology seems fine. Because as someone said, there may be a time when there is need for a quick turnaround. So the methodology that you just outlined, that works for me.
Yeah, I like that too. What do we want quorum to be for financial decisions? 75?
How many members do we have right now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
5.
5 carries the majority. Is that what you mean?
I said 5. I said 5, as in slightly more than majority, but
what percentage would that be? Hold on. What is 5/7?
You could just say 60%, and that would probably be whatever you could.
71% is 5 out of 7. So you want to say 70%?
I would just give an arbitrary percentage or say 60%, more than half, essentially, but not 3/4.
Okay. Does everybody else agree with 60%? Is that being okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. So this went really smoothly. This is usually one of the hardest steps, is figuring out the voting methods. Oh, the last group I worked with is crazy. So do you guys have any other rules that you would like to make sure that we enshrine? And I'm going to update all this in the bylaws.
Are we going with monthly meetings for now? Just for
Mm-hmm. Unless you guys feel like we should, for the first couple of months, do like a bi-weekly meeting just to get caught up and get the things done that we need to, or we can have like an extended meeting, but we're definitely going to probably need at least another meeting of this length to finish off the rest of the things we need to discuss to move forward with the process.
So I'm happy with monthly meetings, but maybe we should have a rule that excluding like emergency situations, you're not allowed to miss more than 3 meetings, because otherwise it's hard to make a decision or get on the same page. So you cannot miss more than 3 meetings and still be a member of the board.
How do people feel about that?
Is this over the course of 12 months?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on board with it.
Yeah, and,
Sure.
and just quick point of clarification. The consecutive works against you, I assume. Like if you miss 3 meetings in a row, that's even worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I think when something like that happens, we do need to have some sort of grievance process where we kind of come together and talk about, like, if someone's not showing up a lot, what we want to do next about that. So I may at some point, if you have missed a lot of meetings, or if someone's continuously made a member of the team uncomfortable, we will tell you that it's going to happen, but we'll probably have that person sit out on the second half of the meeting so we can discuss, or the first half of the meeting so that we can discuss that. But I think, how would you remove someone from the board if they had missed 3 meetings and there wasn't really a good excuse? What kinds of things would you remove someone from the team, and what type of voting process should we have for that?
Is that a general question or a specific?
Yeah, it's a general question.
Okay.
Well, working backwards, I don't think, my personal opinion, I'm not sure if we need a removal process. The missing 3 meetings part would be a removal process. You're disqualifying yourself. And that, at least in my head. So I don't know if we need to codify a process for removal. You are self-removed if you've missed 3 meetings in a row. Now, certainly some allocation for extenuating circumstances is valid, but in general, I'd say missing 3 meetings in a row without benefit of extenuating circumstances. Well,
So how does other people feel about that just being like a strike rule?
I personally feel like even if it has been the 3 missed meetings and no extenuating circumstances, I still feel like we should talk about it just to revise the process for bringing them on board in the first place. If there are any warning signs that we didn't pay attention to, or if we were, let's say a member is a solid contributor when they actually bother to contribute, just ways to navigate that so we don't keep cycling in people who are kind of repeating the same pattern.
Yeah, I would rather not spend a whole lot of time dealing with that. So I would be okay if we could have a discussion, but kind of, you know, more like if someone really thinks that that person like literally was just having like a problem. But obviously I hope that person would step forward and just say like, hey, like this happened to me and I just have been unable to, you know, meet it, but I'm still really interested. I think when someone has just kind of like gone ghost and then just never showed up, like we can just assume that they're no longer really wanting to be a part of it and move to just remove them.
Would that involve a board signed email or, you know, a designated representative? Okay.
Yeah, I think that that's important, that people at least, you know, get to know that that's what's happened and why. And so I think what would be good for that is I would draft something, or we would have something kind of language already drafted in a saved email. And then I would just have you guys review it before I sent it out.
That works.
Yep, Harry, that works.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and be respectful of everyone's time. I said an hour and a half. We almost completed the part that I thought we were going to, so I'm gonna give you guys some homework so that we can have those action plans and deliverables. I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but on the top right hand, there's a little thing that says notes, and you can click on it, and it has the agenda for today, and then it actually has a little thing that shows you like our to-do list. So every time we have one of these meetings, I'll create a to-do list. I'm going to update the bylaws with the norms and things that we discussed, and I'm also going to kind of write a little document outlining our values that we can put somewhere that's open to the public to see, so they can understand a little bit better about our values. But I would like to remind you, is everybody logged into our foundation space on the OT network?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody got on there okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then, so if you haven't got on there, please do that. Has everybody filled out that survey that I sent with their bio and a photo?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna put you on there to do that.
Okay, yeah. I'm looking at it now, actually.
You need to do that too, Ron? Okay.
Yep.
Did you do that, Mara?
I sent you a photo to ask if it was okay, and I.
Yes, it was very okay. You're beautiful.
Okay, thank you. I'll just put that photo in there, and then I think that's it.
Okay, great. And then I will get your guys' photos up on the website as well.
Okay.
I
I might need like an email reminder, so
yeah, I'm gonna send you guys an email reminder, and then I'm gonna like date it for another like 2 weeks from now to remind you. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that works.
Because I need reminders, and it's not a problem for me because I can just schedule it out. I don't even have to worry about it. So I will just do that for everyone. And then so for the last bit of action steps for this coming month is, you see at the bottom, there's the strengths and assets, and then the weaknesses. I would like you to please fill this out before the next meeting so that we can come to our next meeting prepared to finish our kind of organizational structure and norms board. So that's completely finished.
Okay.
If you have problems getting on the link, I'll resend this in an email and also put it on the OT Foundation base.
Okay.
Just so you have that. But I would like you to also kind of think critically about the grant making process. So I assume by now all of us have had some sort of interface with grant making. How do you think that process has been done well? How do you think that process has been done poorly? I've been working in grant management for a long time now, and I've been on both sides. I've been on the award process where I'm giving out grants, and I've been on the process of trying to receive them. And I find them, some of them, to be very difficult and not accessible for non-technical experts. Writing full proposals, although provides a lot of good narrative, can be quite difficult for smaller grassroots organizations and for non-native English speakers. So I think it would be good if we kind of discuss that the next time we meet, and we're going to talk about the concrete strategies that we all need to take to get this grant making process set up. And then I also made a kind of like little timeline for the post award, which is something, as I said earlier, a lot of people forget to talk about. What does that look like after we've awarded them? Is there going to be an evaluation process? Is there a follow-up with, are we providing any additional support? Who's going to maintain the technology after we're finished with the grant? And I think that those are all really important and critical questions to ask of awardees. So please just take some time. If you feel like you want to add anything else to the board that we didn't talk today but come up later, please do, but make sure you kind of write yourself a little note to come back to that to talk about it next month. So I'm going to go ahead and say, everyone fill out strengths and weaknesses. And then think about the grant making process critically. Again, I will put this up on the space and send one more email. You should be, though, getting emails when I post something in the space. So I shouldn't have to be sending both, and soon I will not be. I will just be putting everything on the space. So please make sure you're watching and you're checking it out. And please feel sure, if you have, like, for instance, a grant making process that you really like, or a foundation that you've worked with in the past that did it really well, please feel free to drop those links into the space and we can take a look at it beforehand. If any of those resources pop up, I'll make sure to remind you before our next meeting to kind of take a look at those. And, I know we're all pressed for time and reading is not the most exciting thing, but I think when one of us brings something forward as a resource, we should respect that and take the time to at least look it over briefly so that we can come prepared to engage each other. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, or concerns?
Thanks for starting it.
Yeah, thank you guys. Did you find this process helpful?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Very
And do you
much so.
think that the software that we use today works well?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it looks like it works very well.
Hopefully we can get you on here next time around.
No worries.
And if not, I don't mind filling it out for you. It really is it's not a big deal.
Okay.
But thank you so much for meeting today. We are the last Monday of every month. We're just going to stick to that. Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Yeah.
No.
I know things might change for people as they go back to school or go back to teaching in the fall. So we'll reassess that in the next meeting if that needs to change.
Okay, very good.
All right. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns or anything of that sort, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. I
good.
really appreciate you all.
Thank you. Best, and everyone keep safe.
Yeah. Keep
Yeah.
safe.
Likewise.
Stay healthy.
Indeed. Take care. Bye.
Bye.